Hi, we're Auction Conservation, and this is the Shoot Room Sessions. So we've just had our first ever, to the best of my knowledge, shoot room, essentially wardrobe malfunction, as I poured a glass of water all over myself. So we'll start again as we mean to go on. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
Welcome to the Shoot Room on Tour.
Thank you.
Who are you?
Claire Whitfield. I am a looker after farms and estates for clients across the north of England, and also a wife and a husband. No, that's complete rubbish. I'm not a husband as well as a wife. A mother and a wife.
I mean, it's a full enough deck of things to do anyway without throwing the husband card there. One of my favourite questions on that, on the order of things, work, mum, wife, which are you best at?
The honest answer, I don't feel like I'm good at any of them, but I think that's quite normal, and it depends on the day.
Interesting. So I wasn't at this event for obvious reasons, but Liv Garfield, who at the time, I don't know if she still is, was chief exec of Severn Trent Water, and she held a Women in Leadership event every year. And a few of my friends, when I was working in the public sector, got invited to this event. And Liv came on stage and she said, can we all stop lying to ourselves that we can do all those three things? She said, I am brilliant at my job. I'm a good mum. I'm not even a passable wife in terms of that spectrum. So it's a question I've asked a few times in the shoot room. And my answer is founder of a business, husband, dad, in order. And it's interesting. So go back and I'll check that with Helen and say, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, that's the right order. Whereas she is mum, definitely, then wife. So
yeah, and I don't think you can achieve all of them. I think we all set out that we want to be able to achieve all of them. But what I aspire to be is an amazing role model to my children. I am hopefully an amazing support to my husband, but also the number one person my clients would go to for anything. And some days it works, some days it doesn't.
it's a hell of a lot to achieve.
So it is, but yeah, you've got to be kind to yourself, but you've also got to help. That's what my job is.
I think working mums especially, because being mum and dad is different in my experience with the kids, and we've got Fee sat in the room as well. And I'm always in awe of how Fee does what she does, and his mum, and Ellie Adams in our team as well is an exact example of that. And the guys will look at Fee's calendar through the holidays, and it's the most carefully orchestrated, looks like a set of nuclear plans.
It's a military operation.
To make that work is just incredible.
It is a military operation.
Can we get a round of applause for working mums, please? Amazing people. Claire, how on earth did you get to where you are?
So I grew up and was really fortunate to grow up on a rural estate, big rural estate in Northumberland. My father, late father, was the farm manager for the estate. But at that time, agriculture wasn't really a channel for girls. But I loved the countryside. I spend all my childhood outside. And as I started to progress through school and start to look at what on earth do I do next, it needed to be outside. It needed to have an agricultural slant, but I wasn't going to be a farmer. We didn't own a farm.
Because there was no route to do it, or you didn't want to do it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. There wasn't really a route. I'd forgotten that there was a stage where I wanted to be a vet. I really wanted to be a vet. But my parents quite quickly clocked that my grades weren't going to be good enough, but they decided to use the decoy. Rather than saying I couldn't do it, I got sent on work experience with my dad's friend who was a vet, and I saw more animals put down in 24 hours than he probably put down in a year. And guess what? At the end of the work experience, I didn't want to be a vet anymore. So that was out. But in the meantime, my dad's job was huge. So it included a lot more than just day-to-day farming, and the sort of policy change, and it was at the time of McSherry, and that all started to change in policy, and that started to twig an interest, and addition to that, sort of geography and landscapes and countryside and life in the countryside all started to play, and I was like, oh, actually I can do all of this as a job. So that's how I really got, and I was very fortunate to speak to people who do the job and actually are still in the job, who said, well, you should do this, you should be a land agent, and help me as to where to go to get, in their opinion, best degree to do it.
So you use the word fortunate in terms of, at the time, did you recognise it as fortunate or different or
No, I did it
unique?
because my parents told me to do it. As in to go and see someone.
Yeah.
I think in terms of...
I meant the upbringing in that environment.
It is very fortunate. I was really, really fortunate. I have got such a supportive family, and they were encouraging of anything, quite frankly, I wanted to do, despite being put off being a vet. So it was never a question as you can't do that. It's never a question of you shouldn't do that. But the sort of the combination of things meant I went in that direction, and it's absolutely the right place for me to be.
Okay, so you said you headed off to uni?
Yeah, went to uni. Well, yeah, went away to school, and that was all about the outside, all about outdoors. Sport came before education, which was a massive part of my life.
Say more about the sport.
So everything. I love team sports. Everything to me is a team. Team is everything to me. And school. I went straight into school in Scotland and went straight into hockey, athletics, but that was part of a relay team, or running as part of a team. A lot of outdoor sports, so sailing, expeditions in the countryside, climbing Munros, being sent off age 13. There's 6 of us with 2 tents. We'd known each other for 2 weeks. We'd all arrived at school together. We'd known each other 2 weeks, and in hindsight, and in today's world, they probably can't do it, but we literally got given 2 tents, an expedition pack, and packed all our waterproofs and sent into the Cairngorms for 3 days. Literally, you have to get from here to here. I do now know that the teachers were on the hills on the top watching that we weren't doing anything horrendous to each other, or indeed not putting our tents up. But that as a life experience right from day one was amazing. And the freedom and independence it gave us at a really young age was, I didn't even find it scary. On reflection, you would think,
it's an advantage of youth, right?
Yeah.
You don't. You just think you're invincible and can do anything.
So yeah, exactly. So that was just the start, and then we did expeditions all the time, and we were outside.
Why team?
I think I like feeling part of something. I definitely like feeling part of something. I feel like a joint endeavour is much more rewarding, supportive. I'm a natural. I like to care for others and help others, and I see that as a team role, really, whether that's caring for someone or helping someone or bettering someone, or I just think it's something that you can do when you're together, however big or small a team is, really.
That really comes through in the way you interact with your team here now. Like, definitely.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so it takes you to the end of school and...
So end of school, yeah. So yeah, I think I probably started, I was probably sort of 16, 17 when I was, you've got to make your career choices again.
What a ridiculous thing to ask kids to do, right?
I know.
Like, I still don't know what I want to do.
No, I still, someone's asked me the other day, what do you want to do when you grow up? Very good question.
Yes.
Still working on that bit. So at that stage, it was all about outdoors. It continued to be outdoors, farming, etc. Had this really helpful conversation with someone who said, this is a uni to go to. Also, parents who were hugely supportive, don't do A-levels just because people tell you those should be the A-levels you're doing because it'll get you this. Do A-levels that you enjoy. And actually, that, in hindsight, has been a consistent theme through my life. The school motto was plus est en vous, which is there is more in you, there is more in you you think. And everything about school was about the individual's own development, not the expectation that you should be achieving this, that it was whatever you could be excelled at, whatever you could excel at. So
I think we've just found the name of your podcast.
Well, yeah, in hindsight, it's had a massive impact without knowing it at the time. And
I think it's beautiful advice. I think, so I did not get that steer, but I think it's the thing that I tell young people now. So many people will reach out on LinkedIn and say, "I know, do I need to do a master's to get into this sector?" I'm like, no, you need to be you.
Yeah.
Go do the thing that you want to do and makes you really happy. If you do that, life will be better as a result.
I would rather recruit someone who is confident and caring and wise than someone who has a qualification, a piece of paper to their name.
We literally have multiple PhDs through to multiple people that never step foot in uni, and one or two that step 1 or 2 feet in and then we're straight back out again. As Elle raises her hand in the back of the room. Thank you, Elle. Yeah, so you went to...
So I went, well, then I didn't. Then I went on a gap year.
And what did we do for that year?
I went to cookery school, learnt to cook. Cooked for families. Well, because I was at a school that wasn't big on life skills as a lady. So there was zero cooking skills, zero anything like that. So I thought, well, actually cooking is quite an important skill to have. And I'm a feeder, as you've all probably experienced, in the same way as you've been brilliant in looking after us. I'm a feeder, and I was a bit like, food's a really important part of life. And it creates community and it creates connection. And therefore, if I can provide food, then
you can care for people.
I can care for people. So I went to cookery school. Loved that. It was all designed about people to go and then work in ski chalets. But in the meantime, the school that I was at had connections abroad. So I went to Australia to go and teach outdoor education near Melbourne in Australia. So I did that for 4 months. Taught surfing, because obviously I did a lot of surfing in Northumberland, but I suddenly became a surfing teacher and a rock climbing teacher, which I had done a lot of at school, and assistant house mistress and looked after children. But yeah, that was about the only time I've ever done anything looked after children until I actually had my daughter. So there wasn't, that was definitely a...
Did you contemplate staying over there?
No, I travelled entirely by myself. So after I did the teaching, I then travelled up the east coast of Australia and met friends and lived with friends in Sydney. Then went across to New Zealand and travelled around New Zealand by myself and stayed with poor relatives who'd never met me and have never met me since, who put me up for 3 weeks because I had alcohol poisoning. And then I was coming home and I had a job and I had my degree. I'd done a delayed start for my degree course, so I was coming home. I had a job. I had a harvest job. So no, it wasn't really. I missed home. Missed my parents.
Sounds like you made the most of the gap year, though.
I did try quite hard, to have fun.
It's important.
So anyway, so that's a very long way of getting to 19. So I went to Reading. Yeah, I went to Reading and read land management. So always with the ambition that, again, my land management degree was very much a broad start, and everyone that started in the sector at that age was like, right, you're going to go to London, do 2 lessons. London's very cool. So
do you want to do that as an idea?
I just thought it was what I was supposed to do. So it was.
When you were sat, how many people were in the first lecture?
140.
Okay. Do you remember what it looked like from a gender diversity perspective?
Oh, good question. Do I remember? There was definitely more boys than girls, but it wasn't extreme. The extreme piece was the number who wanted to go into rural, because we all started, whether you were a commercial property agent or a cooperative property surveyor or rural. So we all started at the same time and in the same place and on the same course. And that ultimately was tiny, because by the time we got to our 3rd year, out of the 100 and whatever there was, I think 8 of us did the rural bit, which was the whole of our final year, and there was only 8 of us that did rural.
8 people total?
8 people total out of that year group ended up going rural.
That's interesting.
So
it's an interesting decision for you, because previous examples of you want to be with the cohort, you want to move with that big team, and then to still go out on the limb that was the bit that you were really passionate about?
Yeah. In hindsight, absolutely. I suppose, again, throughout my school, I was encouraged to do what I enjoyed doing. And whilst there was a degree of compliance that doing commercial would have taken me to London or taken me to do this, but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't my thing. I hated the intensity of Reading. I didn't understand why.
There's so much concrete everywhere.
Well, yeah, but no, even worse than that, which in hindsight is a really bad thing. Why 5 miles didn't take 5 minutes to drive? And it took like 45 minutes to do a mile. I remember queuing to go to a supermarket in Reading and just thinking, why do people do this out of
I feel
choice?
exactly the same way every time I go to London.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it very quickly the sort of the London thing sort of very quickly disappeared.
Did you enjoy uni in general?
Loved it. I did love it.
Continue
A
through
sport
uni?
continued, yeah. So played quite high level hockey, largely hockey actually. I very sadly, at the end of my second year, my father was killed in a farming accident. So that was probably, for all sorts of very obvious reasons, was sort of the definitive point that I had to go home. I was going home after the end of my finals. And I needed to be up north, back at home. So, but not wishing anything, but these things all happen for a reason. It ultimately brought me back to the place where I love and I know everyone and I'm supportive. But so that was between my second and my third year.
When that happened, did you at all think maybe I won't go into the rural side of things?
Never.
That's interesting.
Never, because I'd have let Dad down. And it was Dad's support all the way. So it was never an option. And I remember my mum saying, you don't have to go back. And people saying, well, you can delay your finals. You just delay the year. Don't worry about it. It was never really an option. But interestingly, my dad, when I went away to school, and actually today's the first time I've reflected on it, when I was fiercely homesick when I first went away to school. And I remember actually just up the road staying in Aviemore for my first exi out, which was like a weekend away. And I spent the whole time counting literally the minutes when I was going to have to go back to school. And I remember my dad saying to me, you don't have to go back. You can get in the car and we can just go home. And something was a bit like, no, I've got to ride this out. There was no sense of reason. I had to do it. Mum and Dad, it was the right thing to do. So that's what I did. So to the same degree of after Dad died, he died in September and we were going back 2 weeks later. It was where he died the week before my 21st. And the only thing I missed was Freshers Week, but who does Freshers Week in their third year anyway? So, and I just went straight.
I was there a decade.
Oh no, definitely wasn't going to be in Reading a decade. So yeah, I just got stuck on. You've got to get on with it. There are things you have to just get on with. And my perception was Dad would have been disappointed. He would never have been disappointed in me, but I was doing it. I just had to find a way of doing it.
He'd be incredibly proud now, wouldn't he?
I hope so. And that's what drives me probably every day without realising it.
It's lovely. So you go home?
Well, yeah. So my dad was an amazing, amazing farm manager and had a huge, huge reputation for everything he did and for the estate that he worked for. But despite worshipping the ground he walked on, I was very conscious that going into my career, which in hindsight was quite, I'd obviously thought about something I wasn't thinking about at the time, but I obviously did think about it. I didn't want to go back and be known as Tim Mallon's daughter. I wanted to go back to be me.
Why not?
I don't know. Whether it was because I honestly don't know whether it was to do with wanting to carve out my own career, but I've always been immensely proud of everything he achieved. I don't know whether I didn't want to live in a shadow. I didn't want to let him down. I honestly don't know. So I was convinced. I was just fine. I'll go to Yorkshire because Yorkshire's close enough, but far enough away. It's not far from home. But anyway, the way it all worked out, I ended up half an hour away from home, but that was the best thing I could have done, really. I was home for my family and I was just there to, in hindsight, probably recover and deal with it. But yeah, I don't know whether the other.
So the first job?
Straight into being a land agent.
Yep. With?
Stratton Parker.
Okay.
Day one, 3rd of October, quite a long time ago. Quite a long time ago. So I went straight in and went in as an assistant land agent, trained, and was very fortunate as compared to, I think, some of the pressures that businesses put under grads now. I literally spent 2 years going round with different colleagues, shadowing them.
Does the word fortune and luck mean different things to you?
Yeah, I think they do. I think luck, I think you create your own luck. I think you have to do things that mean you might straight lucky, whereas fortunate, I think other people can.
That's really interesting. So they're the other way for me.
Okay.
So I think lucky is like it just happened. Whereas I think fortune is it's the recognition coming back for the work that you put in.
Yeah,
So
completely different, completely different. Yeah, I think some people say, oh, well, it was just really lucky. I was like, yeah, but you do have to do things. Yeah, okay, some stuff just lands on your plate.
Yeah.
But actually, I think, particularly in in my professional world, I think luck, you do have to do stuff. You've got to be there. You've got to be out there. You've got to get yourself in amongst it.
And talk about the surface area of luck. Harder you work, the more you put yourself out there, the surface area for luck to impact or stick to is great.
Stick.
Yeah.
That's what, using a sort of agricultural analogy, that you throw enough mud at the wall, eventually something will stick.
Please don't throw much.
Yeah. I'll try not. I'll try. It was
That's the worst.
like a real mess.
This sofa already.
A real mess.
Yeah. Okay. During that 2-year period, was there a mentor, a senior person that really impacted and influenced your career?
No, I don't think there was one. I was really fortunate that I was part of a national business that had a really strong network regionally. There was 3 offices, so we worked really closely with 3 offices as 3 off network. So I got to experience different types of work. So ironically, experienced some type of commercial work and got into some planning, which is ironic.
When that happened, how did I get here? I
literally remember thinking, oh, I really should have listened a little bit harder when I was doing that part of my degree. So I was really fortunate to experience that. I had another colleague who was hugely, or still is, hugely diligent and hugely intelligent and brilliant in teaching me basically the nuts and bolts of what the job involved. Then I had a wider network across the region of people who were just really kind and really supportive. And I was probably there was one other female, I think.
Was that something you were conscious of at the time?
Not really. Probably a bit, but probably actually more so from clients than from my team. There was some big uphill struggles with clients. But didn't really hold me back.
Just work through it.
Well, yeah, it was. I think for the same reason, I was sufficiently confident that I'd been through the same course, I'd had the same learnings, I'd had the same coaching, I'd had the same experiences, and arguably compared to some, I probably had more life experience in farming and things like that.
You didn't have a 3-year degree. At this point, you had a 20-year apprenticeship.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. And I'd been really fortunate to have done so much with Dad, and literally down to feeding cattle and lambing sheep and sitting in tractors and leading corn and grain sampling. So I had a practical knowledge of the rural landscape. So if a farmer or a landowner or someone asked me a question, I could actually speak with genuine knowledge most of the time around that subject.
How did you cope with the times you couldn't speak with knowledge?
Not pretend.
Is that something you knew early?
Yes, really early, because for the same reason, I would never want to lead someone down the garden path without being safe in the knowledge it was the right thing or that it was correct, or the idea, and I suppose in hindsight, the idea is probably the idea of failure horrifies me, terrifies me. And to the same degree, therefore, giving someone advice that ultimately could be perceived as me being incorrect or failing is it's just a place I try everything my powers not to put myself into, probably from a really early age. So it would be always a case, and actually part of your training would always say, I don't know the answer, but I know where to look to find it. And that was one of the benefits of being in a team, that you could go back and say, I've got a problem and I really don't know how to sort this, but please can you help?
When you think back to that period, is there one of those difficult moments, one of those things that you remember, I do not know how to solve this, this is incredibly challenging, difficult?
Yeah. So there's some people do it. You have to do the end of tenancies or dealing with any tenancy claims. You have to measure UMVs and RMVs, which is basically to do with nutrients left in the soil and manure left in the soil at the end of the tenancy. And I remember in my degree thinking, are you serious? Are we really measuring how much nitrogen is left in the soil? But actually, it's a really important thing to farmers. questionably going forward, but that's a whole other subject. And I remember having an end-of-tenancy discussion and coming back and opening the book thinking, I have absolutely no idea where to start. Arguably should have done having done a degree, but so basically marching off with this handbook going, I need some help. I really don't know how to do this. But knowing that if I asked someone else can explain it, I could do it. But I definitely wasn't going to make up that because I didn't have a clue. But yeah, so I think, and to this day, to the same reasons, same thing. If someone asks me something and I don't know, I can discuss a topic because that's my job to know a topic. But if it's something technical, I will go away and find out or find someone who can.
Take us to the next chapter of your career.
So qualified as a child surveyor, back-to-back to my agricultural valuers qualifications at the same time, which arguably were actually much more helpful in dealing with, because that was a very much more practical, still is a much more practical process in terms of learning and what you do for people on the ground. And then, I've given your wings. I was sort of encouraged, but always with the opportunity to ask questions or work with other people. And many of the times it was double act. So you went out with another colleague or someone who was more experienced or just somebody else. You normally travelled in pairs. So you always went out and either helped each other or you were doing something. And in those day and age, when you went to measure a farm building, you had a tape measure. So you need one person on the end of the tape measure and one person on the other end of the tape measure. And then you didn't realise it at the time, but the amount of things you were learning, even just the way you spoke or the way you met someone or the things you thought about before you got there, it was a team effort.
I encourage the team never to travel on their own.
Yeah.
Because the efficiency of being together, you get double benefits.
It's incalculable.
There's a concept of no extra time. It doesn't take any extra time. In the someone can be working, someone can be having a conversation, and because we're a remote team, it's a way of bending time and getting out of it. And I think
massively. I love going out with colleagues, and you just see different perspectives. And one of the things I think is really
to mention, it's safer and more happier and a more enjoyable experience. So you get a plus 10% on that anyway.
Yeah.
So
and it's very easy to become isolated in our sphere potentially, whereas if you're hunting in pairs, then you're together and you can. And also, I think it's really important when you meet people, everyone will take something different away from a conversation, and someone else will hear something, and someone else will hear something different. And then you talk about it after, and go, "Oh my goodness, I'd never thought."
So Dan and I have looked at every estate. We've viewed more than 80 estates together, and a lot of those with Josh now from a photography perspective. Quite quickly, when we go view somewhere, be it the agent or the seller, they will let us know which one they want to talk to. They will connect better with me or with Dan, and at that point we pivot, and that person's there to make a relationship to understand the individual. The other one is
absorb.
Where's the asbestos? Where's the boundary issue? Where's the problem here?
Tip.
Where's there's some tyres over there, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's underneath the tyres?
Where's the static caravan that's always there? Just every single one you go to.
Where did you get rid of your old sheep dip?
So, but by having the two, you can totally see that. And you get the dynamic that works because people naturally take to some people, whereas they don't others. So that's really fascinating. So your next chapter from
so basically I was encouraged and gained the confidence to go out and then start speaking to people. I don't really know from where this came, but then I always liked the idea of selling a farm. I just like the idea of selling a farm, whether I thought it was exciting or I'm not.
Because it was career progression or the act.
No, not at all.
Doing it.
Nothing I've ever done has been based on the fact it was going to progress my career. It wasn't. I've never made a conscious decision because this is going to be good for my career.
When you played sport, was it important to you to play for the first team or score the most goals or win?
This is going to sound really bad. I always played for the first team, but that's because justification. She quickly says, "I will always try my hardest, and unless I'm going to do it properly, I'm not going to do it at all." So unless I was really good at something, I would never expose myself in a way that would make me not look anything other than try my hardest or try my best. Well, maybe they're the same thing. So everything I do is about to the best of my ability. And if that put me in a space where I therefore potentially wasn't near the best, I didn't do it.
That sounds very familiar. That sounds
So in terms of work, I quite like the idea of selling a farm. If, like all these things happen for reasons. I'm a strong believer in
often
that.
because people make them happen.
Yeah, I can definitely say the first farm I sold was absolutely nothing to do with me making it happen. It was a decision, and again, interestingly, in hindsight, it was a decision by a landowner who had owned a farm for a very long time and inherited it, been in generations, years, in one of the wildest parts of Northumberland. But ironically, he didn't like the road noise that you can hear from it. Well, the road noise, even to myself as a Northumbrian through and through, was literally when there's an east wind, and we never get an east wind in Northumberland, when there's an east wind, when there's no leaves on the trees, and if there's a lorry going up the road. And he would visit very infrequently. But that tiny moment when he didn't enjoy that feeling was enough for him to...
I don't get the road noise thing. Like, I don't... Like, in a
you've
city...
had road...
Yes.
Yeah, but you've had road noise.
Oh, my life.
I've never lived near a road. Road noises literally will keep me up all night, but I've never lived near a road.
I guess I don't spend any time in silence, though. So, like, I'm always listening to a podcast or an audiobook or the kids or Helen.
Yeah.
Or, I don't do silence. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't hear the road if I'd be listening to something else or music.
Yeah.
Or...
So anyway, all of a sudden we had this estate to sell. So abracadabra, I was selling something.
Well, that doesn't presuppose that you would have definitely sold it, right? So it could have gone to someone else
It
to
could,
sell it?
no, absolutely not. You're absolutely right.
So did you raise your hand and say, I want to do it?
Well, I've been managing it, so I had the knowledge. And again, in terms of sort of best person to do it, I had the knowledge. Therefore, I could talk to people and have the knowledge around it.
Why can you talk to people, Claire? So you speak wonderfully and you are captivating and charismatic, and around a dinner table, everyone turns... I've seen it. Last night, there was like 20 people at dinner and an entire half of the table adjusted their chairs to look at you. Because, and you can't teach people that. There's a natural charisma to things. Do you know where yours comes from? And be honest.
Absolutely not. Because ironically, as a teenager, I remember when I would go to parties, I'd be like, I've got nothing interesting to say to people. Who's going to want to talk to me? So just don't say anything, because otherwise you might look stupid. And I'm not funny. So...
I mean, that's bullshit.
Well, but I don't know. I don't know where that flipped. I genuinely don't know where that flipped. Whereas now, I love connecting with people. I love spending time talking to people. I'd much rather sit down and have an hour's conversation with them than write a dull report. Not least because I think you get so much more from being with people, and you learn so much more.
It's a 4D communication, not a 2D one.
Yeah. And
try and remember when was the first time you felt confident in that communication? When did the teenage girl become the...
Probably when I was doing viewings on that estate, because I knew it, except for the fact I got the solicitor stuck on a 4x4 on the back of the estate and had to ring the tenant to come and pull me out. And before he pulled me out, he rang the entire county to tell everyone that the land agent had got stuck while doing a viewing. But aside from that, I was huge. I just felt like I knew the subject.
And just stage.
I knew my subject, and if I felt confident to talk about something, then no one could tell me I was wrong, because I knew it, and I knew where the fences were, I knew what the sheep were, I knew what the stocking density had been, I knew where the water supply was.
Has anyone ever told you were wrong? Was there a foundation experience that scarred you enough to create that's why I have to never be wrong?
I was told I couldn't do stuff at school. I had a teacher that told me I could do the sort of the first 2 stages of doing a report, but I couldn't do the analytical side. And I don't know whether it's from watching others. I've thought about it past, and actually, ironically, I thought about the conversation that one of my teachers saying, you can't do that. You're good at doing this, but you can't do the analysis. And that continues to haunt me when it comes to a written report. But It will have happened. Someone will have put a ceiling on it in the past. But I'm not. I can only imagine it was a cumulative effect rather than a standout.
What an absolutely horrible but wonderful gift to receive, because that's fueled you to like achievements that might not come without that. Like, I have a hell of a chip on my shoulder from how I grew up and where, and people will often say, would you change that? Do you wish? I'm like, nope, because I might have coasted through life happy and content, whereas I don't really have the concept of that.
Yeah.
So instead, let's drive on and do more as a
And I think my attitude towards life and embracing life and being perpetually enthusiastic, the horror of many, I think that part of me entirely comes from when Dad died. That nothing can be as bad as that, and I could never feel as bad as that. So from there, everything is okay. It's not great, or it's quite hard, but it's never as bad as that.
Does the external presentation of enthusiasm that people see in you, is that what it feels like inside? Let me explain that. So everyone says I'm always enthusiastic. In my head, I'm like, I'm really not. Like, I'm mildly annoyed about most things and just trying to improve them and make them better. Whereas you take Dan, our incredible head of environment, people think his demeanour is quite miserable. But he's like, I'm not, I'm really happy. But it's what you feel inside versus what your external presentation is. So the flamboyance, the enthusiasm, the energy that you bring, is that how it always feels inside?
No, especially with small children. But
that's insomnia and like not being able to feel tiredness.
I think it's just, sleep's the sort of thing you can decrease the amount of hours you sleep and still fit in everything else. So just decrease.
Not forever.
No.
Yeah.
But no, I think entering a place or a room with people where you feel where you are energetic and you can bring energy to a room, I think is valuable. Some people hate it, but I used to get troubled by that.
Who hates it?
No, I've colleagues in the past be like, oh, she's always so smiley.
I mean, that's them being...
Well, and actually I'm sufficiently old to think, do you know what? Right now,
for avoidance of doubt, it's very easy for me to pass that analysis of that situation. I wouldn't feel that way. I would carry the... I spend too much time focused on the criticism we get. I can get 10 emails randomly from strangers, LinkedIn daily, saying how amazing OC is, how they want to work.
Oh,
one personal moment.
One piece of bad news. Oh yeah, I'll pick up on that. One piece of, I'm not, and I do know where that comes from, but I'm not good at because I try my hardest in everything I do. Therefore, when there is negative feedback, which is potentially perfectly justified, I really struggle. If it's framed in a way that's constructive and I talk about it, but I'm really bad at picking stuff up and going, oh no, that I completely messed up. I got that really bad.
Way
wrong.
too heavy for too long as well, or just fast?
No, I think I just focus on the negative, and thankfully I don't really go near. I certainly don't make significant comment or put myself in a place where I'm at risk of negativity on socials. Because I would be the first person that would pick up going, oh my God, that person thinks I haven't done a good job. And to a degree, if people say, oh, you haven't done that very well, I'll be like, but 1,000 people said it was great, but one person said it's bad. I would focus on the person that said it was bad. But I think that's probably quite normal.
Yeah. Normal amongst high achievers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've sold our first farm.
So I sold our first farm. And I don't really,
was it a bug at that point? You were like, wow, I love that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Just that I could do it. So again, it had worked. It was successful. I'd got a good result for the client. And therefore, by the nature of the work that we were all doing, we were out seeing farmers and we were out seeing estate owners. And because I'd done it, it was therefore a skill set that we then had in the office, which we probably hadn't had before. So ultimately, someone else said, oh, well, I'm thinking of selling my farm. Oh, well, we can do that now. We can do that. And so guess what? Off I went and sold another farm.
I've got quite obsessed recently about multifaceted players in a team. So like cricket story for the cricket lovers out there. When you can both bat and bowl in a team, you can contribute a huge amount. And England won 2 Cricket World Cups largely having a team of all-rounders, which had never been done before. And I think, especially in a startup environment, if you've got someone that can bring that multifunctional offering, it's so valuable, because in a team sport, you're limited to 11 or 15 players or what have you. But in a startup, you're limited as well by the budget you've got and how much you can grow. So if you've got someone who can come in and offer that absolute range of skills and responsibilities, it's just so beneficial.
And I think that's one thing I am hugely aware of, that I was so lucky to have started a career that I literally experienced all sorts, from auctioneering tyres at a farm stock sale.
You were literally on the gavel?
No, I was clerking for it,
okay.
but I would go and speak to the farmers and take their name and their address down.
Auctioneer.
Thankfully, it never quite got quite
I think
big.
that'd be fun.
Yeah, so from literally doing that to going and asking farmers' names, to putting in a planning application for a new road junction for a new farm building, to putting in a planning application for a farm building, to creating a woodland creation grant, which in hindsight is fascinating. I did it all. I had to do it
The
all.
maddest one you were asked to do on what stands out as one, like, sorry, what do you want us to do?
Probably selling something at a farm sale, like but it's a box of scrap. And you'd go into a farm sale, and everything has a value to someone. But at the time, I remember going to these farms, and they were retiring out of farming. Some of them were leaving the entire farm, so they were literally sweeping up their entire workshop and putting it into boxes. And then we'd sell these boxes of rubbish. But people would spend hours poring over these boxes to see what they could find in them.
Treasure hunters.
They were treasure hunters, but they were scrap metal treasure hunters. Anyway, I remember doing lines and lines of these boxes in farm sheds, writing down the name. Same person would buy it. They were fascinated with their box of scrap.
We've come a long way from selling the boxes of scrap.
Yeah, we have.
There's some really iconic estates now.
Yeah.
So take us to arriving at Knight Frank.
So, as I've said, my world is all around caring and enthusiasm, and I love my clients. I do everything for my clients, and I got an opportunity to come and start something new and start something fresh over a whole new patch in a business that didn't really have that offering. It certainly didn't have the offering in the north. They literally had no offering at all.
Yeah, we talked about that. When I first encountered Knight Frank in general in 21, the narrative in the market was, they don't do rural, they don't do farms and estates.
Nothing.
They do really great houses, but that's it.
Yeah, and I'd never ever considered working for them because they didn't do what I do. It was they as a brand, they were aspirational. We are aspirational in terms of our massive houses, but we don't have millions of massive houses in the north of England, or certainly in Northumberland. We had some nice houses that they had sold. They have a massive commercial offering in Newcastle, but again, it was commercial. I quite clearly don't do commercial. So it was they were never a brand that were even on the cards for me to go and work for. But as brilliantly the partnership decided to invest in a rural business, I got the call. And for all sorts of reasons, it was hugely fortuitous timing. And
was that a call out of nowhere?
Completely out of nowhere. I'd just come back off my second maternity leave after having my little boy, and I was coming back as like, right, well, now's the time. We've had 2 children. We're not having any more. Now's the time to get stuck back in. And it was something exciting and new, and it was a partnership, and I've spoken to various people who work for them and started to do a bit of background to them and thought, actually, these people sound really nice people. So I got approached by a headhunter.
Okay.
So that I got approached by another partner in the business and met him, and now a partner that I still have in the business, and met them for lunch, and just knew straight away, sitting down for lunch.
Nice being wooed for an opportunity like that.
Yeah, but I was just really excited about. I'd been in the same business for 19 years, so it was never on. everything I do is I'm loyal to the people I work with or I work for or who I look after as a family. So I had never thought of a change really. So when I was approached, I was like, oh, this is a bit of a curveball. But then I thought, well, why? Yeah, it's interesting. It's a partnership. So let's give it a go. Why not?
Awesome. So give people a flavour of the Knightfrank Rural team now in terms of the scale of the business, how you're structured, some facts and figures so they can perceive.
Yeah, of course. So we now have 10 offices across the country. I arrived and there were 10 or 12 of us in a rural team. We are now about 600% bigger than that. We have a lovely, lovely team of people.
Yes, you do.
Who want to help each other, but that comes from the culture that we're in. So the business that we're in, I have never come across a set of people who have such an attitude and a desire to help one another.
It doesn't feel like a big corporate culture.
It definitely doesn't. It feels like a close group of friends.
How is that even possible at the scale you are?
I honestly, it comes from the top. And every single person I have ever dealt with in the business has been so keen to help. And it's not about the fee. It's not about what they're going to get out of it. It's not about who they're going to get recognised by for doing it. Everyone has a genuine interest to help one another. And as a value, that is exactly what I want to do. So it wasn't really even a question because they want to do what I want to do. So then it all works.
And how you want to do it.
And how I want to do it. And the people, I'm surrounded by people who have exactly the same approach. And I think it's a pretty good test of a business. If you work with people who all have the same value, then why wouldn't you want to be there? And how much further can you go when you all have that same ambition to help one another?
The relentless pursuit of happiness for the clients, is that a rural team or a Knightfrank wide ethos?
That's an old ethos.
That's an old ethos.
But so we historically did a huge amount on positive psychology and the benefits of happiness, and happiness comes with a really fluffy
I
analogy.
literally got reprimanded in the public sector for using the word happiness.
Yeah.
And it was like, no one's here to be happy, Richard. And I'm like, are you listening to yourself? So you're saying we're coming here to be unhappy. Is that what you want?
And I think that's really right. And I think the problem we've all been a society that's been, and I'm absolutely as guilty of this in the past, is that you'll be, it comes back a bit like today, it comes back to climbing a mountain. As a child, we got dragged up a lot of mountains, which is funny given I now love climbing mountains. Dad would
Be
have,
very careful as a parent. You're either consciously or unconsciously teaching your kids to
yeah,
like things.
exactly.
So
I got,
be sure what
yeah.
you're doing.
But every time we were going near the top of a hill, it's like, the view will be amazing from the top. Well, as a 7-year-old child, I didn't give two hoots what the view was like because all I wanted to do was run back down again. I don't care about the view. But it was all about getting to the top. When you got to the top, you got a nice view. And the analogy that we've all worked in, and certainly as the start of my career, is when you become this, you'll be happy. Or when you become this, you'll be successful. And I can even remember where I was walking, which field I was walking across, because I do a lot of walking. I remember walking across a field and I remember being told it's not about the end goal, because if you're not enjoying it while you're doing it, what's the point? I could even walk you to virtually the spot where that literally the penny dropped, and I was a bit like, I could keep running on this hamster wheel, but I'm not enjoying it, and therefore that drives a set of behaviours that is not natural to me and I don't want to be known for. So this has to stop. And it stopped. And I changed course and the type of work that I was doing. But that whole piece around being happy, and the overused pun, but it's absolutely right, is that happy as a journey is not a destination, is every part of my day now. And whether that's helping my kids or helping my clients or helping my team, that if you're not enjoying it, and that enjoyment can come out of all sorts, but if you're not enjoying it and you're not in the flow of doing something, when you get to the end, the enjoyment factor lasts 10 seconds.
What do you think of the concept of work-life balance?
I don't think you can have it. I think if you're enjoying something, it just happens, and you find a way that they work simultaneously. And some people say, "Oh, well, I've got to work-life balance. I've got to go home and do the kids." Yeah, of course, I do the kids, but then if I've got something to do and I need to do something work, I'll do it. But I don't see that as going back to work. I'm doing it because I want to do it. And I think if I was treated in a different way, that you've got to go back to work because you've done what you've done that day and you've got to fit more in, then it would be very different. But I do it because I want to help my clients and I want to help my team. So it just happens.
A head of operations has a phrase, and he says, "You don't have to do it; you get to do it." It's an interesting.
Yeah, it is.
It used to be such an in vogue thing, the work-life balance thing, but I think as a concept, it's been so corrupted by 4-day working week, just do less, work is a terrible thing, and it fails to recognise, like, your career is the story of following your passion and working your ass off. And achieving great things because of those two things. Well, if you decided you were only going to work X number of hours and put hard boundaries around things, you wouldn't have done half the things or half the experiences you...
Nor would I be the mother that I am.
That's interesting. Say more.
Well, going back to, I do it to set an example to my children. And if we all stuck to sort of the 9 till 5 or the 8:30 till 6 or whatever it was, then I wouldn't be able to do what I have to do for the kids when it suddenly calls upon to be at school assembly. And there's plenty of parents in the past just missed it. And that's not what I'm out there to do. My parents broke their neck to come and see us and be there to watch a hockey match or watch something or come to athletics or something. And they found a way to make it fit. Now, they didn't have 9-to-5 jobs because they were farming and in tourism. So they could work it round. And that, without realising it, is a very important part of what I do as a mother, that I am there for the stuff that I have to be there for and I want to be there for. But with that comes the flex that I've still got to do the job and I've still got to look after my clients. And as I describe it, I just do it in a slightly different shape so that I can be a mum, because that is the most important role I have, to nurture children to be the best individuals they can be. And I can't do that if I don't give and invest in them in the same way as I invest in my job. So the investment I put in my children is the same as an energy that I would put into my life at work and trying to be the best wife I can possibly be. And there is always going to be a balance. The seesaw's never level. There's some days you get it right and there's some days I definitely don't get it right, but I'll always try harder to make it better next time. So that's all I can do, really.
It's amazing, Claire. How has the sector changed in the time you've been working in the rural economy?
I think as a society we've become a lot better at understanding people. Just from my own feelings, I think what I definitely didn't learn much about was sort of the emotional side of, and so the psychological side of estate ownership and the responsibilities that brought at a young age. But to some degree, why would I? And I think the burden that estate owners and farm owners carry, both themselves for what they need to do to pass potentially to the next generation, is weighs a lot heavier now, because not only do they have to think about how they get it to the next generation, but they have a responsibility to society, they have a responsibility to the environment, they have a responsibility to I don't like the word stakeholders, but the people they work for, which is arguably the community. But I think they wear so many hats, and I probably hadn't really appreciated that. And I don't think as a sector we were very good at appreciating that. Everyone knew that people had stuff to sort out and they had to deal with succession, but the weight that they carry around that responsibility for their village, or the people that live in their village, or the people that live on their estate, I think now is in terms of what we have to do, it's different. And I think the role I play now, and I joke with colleagues, and it's not a joke because it's really serious, especially at the moment, that I'm 50% land agent, 50% counsellor. And that's probably, that may have just come with time served, and I'm able to have those conversations with people. But I think the role that we now play for our clients is to be there in some really hard times, some really dark times, and helping them on that journey, which is an overused word, I think is absolutely vital role, to be able to get alongside someone emotionally and connect and frankly sit in the mud with them and go, do you know what? I really don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to be here, and one way or the other, we will work this out.
It reminds me of a line from The West Wing. Do you ever watch that?
Not knowingly.
Amazingly well-written US political drama. Watched it at uni. One of the characters tells a story about a guy being stuck down a well, and his best mate walks up, sees him down the well, and jumps in the well. The guy at the bottom goes, What on earth are you doing? We're both at the bottom of the well now. And he says, don't worry about it. I've been down here before. I know the way out. So it's been there, and that person helped.
Yeah, that sitting in the mud analogy I've heard in the past, relatively recently in podcasts, and not least I spend a lot of time walking in mud. I can absolutely know what it feels like to be in mud. But I think I've got friends who are going through some horrific times at the moment. You don't need to have the answers. I can't give them the answers. I can't do anything to change the situation. But what I can be there is, I can just be there.
Yeah.
And whether it's a friend or whether it's a client, that is a role. No one well, they probably do teach it, but they definitely don't teach at a land agency when you're doing land agency. But I think that's certainly something I've learned, and that's evolved, and I think is a skill set going forwards for people that help estate owners. I think it's really, really important.
I literally had two stories jump to mind. The first, very fortunate to call Charlie Courtney a friend, who's the Earl of Devon, and it's been on the podcast. Check it out, amazing podcast. So I went to see him recently, and he would never be able to say this because people see this charming, suave, handsome guy who lives in a castle. Doesn't he have the dream life? It's a really hard job.
Really hard.
It is the most, like, the pressures on him, and he would never say this because he's just amazing. But the pressures on him in terms of managing the estate, balancing the economics, the responsibilities to the local community, the staff he has, the pressure of multiple generations of the family wanting you to pass that on, helping the kids understand that if it is something they want to be involved with and do, and it's such a no one would choose that job.
You absolutely wouldn't. And I think you add in, especially now, which is absolutely right, it's the whole discussion around primogeniture and how are you going to deal. How do you have a discussion with 3 girls? How do you deal with that? Or how do you create an estate structure that means that you can support 3 families in 3 different ways? And there are many people, whether it's generational wealth or whether it's new wealth, the feeling of, or the potential feeling of having a millstone around their neck is real. And I speak to lots of people who go, isn't it amazing? Your clients must lead the most amazing life. I've got a colleague who went to go and sit with someone. His heating hasn't been working for 4 weeks. It's going to cost £250,000 to fix the heating. But he doesn't have a choice. He can't just suddenly sell up because that he's got such a burden of responsibility that he has to pass it to the next generation. But they'll freeze. And okay, they're lucky in many other ways, but they will make real. They have to make real decisions and that have massive impacts on people, and that comes with a huge weight of responsibility.
So we're recording this right at the start of Feb 25. Lots of noises around Labour government changes and things in terms of what they said they would do in relation to farming and food and the rural sector. How have these changes landed? What does it feel like out there for some of your clients?
That we're under attack. For misunderstood reason. Going back to the sort of the burden responsibility, whether it's a landowner or quite frankly a small farmer, what the rural economy brings to society and the societal value that is brought to the world in which we live has been really, really, really misunderstood and quite frankly ignored. Not helped by what more could we have done to project that in a way that people could actually see what we do and what we bring. So I think people say, well, I've been providing homes for people for generations. I've got families that have lived on this estate for 3-4 generations. We are an intrinsic part of this community, and we're there, and we've always been there, whether it's to provide, quite frankly, to provide people to go into the army to fight wars, whether it's to provide food in times of crisis. And we've seen very recently, farmers stepped up to provide food in COVID. And people became much more appreciative of what we had on our doorstep, whether it's food, whether it's open space, and the societal benefits that can be brought to our local people by being in that rural space are really, really important. And I just don't think people get it. They're just the wealth that is perceived and miss what else it brings to society. And whether it's food, whether it's beautiful landscapes, the value that spending time in fresh air brings to people, you can't put a price on it. But we need to put a price on it.
Do you think we're going to see any Labour change in the decision around inheritance tax, or do you think they're wedded to it?
I would love to be proved wrong.
But you think they're going to stay where they are?
They've left pensioners freezing their houses this winter. Quite frankly. So I think if that's their perception of people freezing in what hasn't, thank goodness, yet been a bad winter, are they going to change it for farmers who their perception is live in a warm, dry house with a lot of capital wealth? I doubt it. I'd love to be proved wrong.
It's really interesting, isn't it? So I was very vocally unhappy with the Tory government for essentially announcing everything and just lying all the time. And I said I'd have a good run at trying to give Labour as much room as possible. We've been fortunate to meet some of the ministers and talk about their views of the environment, and they were far more learned in terms of natural capital and carbon and BNG side of things than I expected. But what we've seen in the first few months hasn't been what they promised. And I think you've got a honeymoon period, but quite quickly, Keir Starmer's burnt through that and just eroded a lot.
We listened to various new ministers last summer who were promising to listen, and they didn't know the answers, but they would learn. But their reliance, we rely heavily on data to help our clients going forwards, and it's one of the really, really exciting bits about what we do at Knight Frank is understanding the data around estates and how we can use that to benefit them going forwards. But when you look at data used badly and mismanaged and how dangerous that is, it creates policies that has such massive impact on, it's not just people's lives, it's whole communities are going to be affected by this. And it will have a genuine impact on people in the rural landscape in some shape or form. But I just worry they don't care.
So what advice in sort of every landscape's different, every farm's different, the unique challenges for a family are different. But in general terms, if someone sat at home listening to this or wherever they are, what should they be thinking about to help make their situation as best as possible? What are the sort of general pieces of advice a landowner should be doing?
Understand what you've got.
Say more about that.
And we've been talking about it today is, I'm a very visual person, but understanding what you have as an asset. And we're very fortunate that we have made progress. There's still an awful lot of progress still to make around understanding what environmental delivery an estate has, combined with its wider piece around whether it's food, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's about community space, open space. So I think understanding what you have right now What can you do to benefit, influence, make better? There are opportunity costs naturally with any decision when it comes to things like that. But I think
hard though, right? If as you say, and you sort of characterised it as feeling under attack, which I think is really accurate. If you feel under attack, that's not a place to find innovation from. You're just going to hunker down, become entrenched, and just
I'm scared.
hope the bad goes away. Yet to ask people, no, be excited about a future from a position of being under attack is largely impossible.
So, and that's, I think, landowners have historically sort of hunkered down. Oh, we'll be fine. We can get through this, and they can.
What we've always done,
and they can. They absolutely can. We have the ability now to genuinely help people in our areas, whether that's through providing space for them to enjoy today. Is an absolute prime example, going out and enjoying the countryside and the well-being that brings. Get doctors to come and experience what it's like to be in the countryside. How can their patients benefit from that? Get people to connect back with what it feels like to be breathing in fresh air in an open space. And I think trying to do things that you can actually have an impact on, and whether that's through the environment and whether that's actually helping people, producing a positive income in terms of monetary is the product of a job well done. So having a plan around what you can genuinely do, and there's got to be an investment part and financially about that in some of these things. But I think understanding what you've got now, what assets you've got, and that's multifaceted now, and it has to include the environment now. What have you got, and which are the bits that you can do more of? And actually, going back to the happiness piece, and it's a question I ask people when I go to estates, is what's your favourite bit of this estate? And now everyone's going to steal my question, so now it's not going to be my question, it's going to be everyone else's question. But the number of people that say to me, I have never been asked that question. And the responses you get, some of them are the tiny bits of an estate, like standing next to a tree or standing in the river or sitting on a tree stump. And we can all picture times when we've been out in the countryside, and I can picture a tree stump that I love to sit on and just go and breathe. And helping people connect back with something that's genuinely in their control, and let them focus on a good thing. And my job is to take away the bits that keep them awake at night. And if you can get them to focus on the bit they enjoy and the bit that really lights their fire, and their purpose that really sets them off on a journey that makes their role as a landowner have real meaning, then that has to be what they focus their energy on.
You're so uniquely placed to ask that question, because when people hear this podcast, they will see that that's the question you've asked yourself in every chapter to propel yourself forward.
Without realising it.
Yeah, wonderful. I know it's hard out there right now, but if we fast forward 10, 20 years, sorry, John Elkington for long time frames, 2 years, what's going to be better in the sector? What are the emerging trends that might be exciting, that if our kids are sat having this conversation on their version of whatever a holographic straight into people's minds podcast is, what will they be excited about the rural economy?
I really, really hope, I genuinely hope that people start to value the rural economy. And we have a real opportunity to create a better balance between the urban and rural economies. We've done an awful lot of damage to our environment, the world in which we live, the people in which we live, and what's...
The we's important there, because all of us have.
Everyone's done it.
Everyone who's been on a flight, everyone who's... And that's not vilifying anyone.
Governments have done it. People have done it. Society's done it.
Incentivise people to do it, and still do with gas and oil every day.
They spent 50 years telling us to drain peat bogs.
Yeah.
They spent 50 years telling us to put more chemical on to produce more food. Now we're going in a complete reverse. okay, so that's a decision. I have no influence. It's a bit like asking me to control the weather. I can't control the weather, but what I can do is help people. And I think in the future, I think we as a sector will have succeeded in helping landowners if the rural, it's not just the economy. I think if rural society is valued more. But I think we have a real opportunity to actually help each other recover from some of the damage we've done in the past. And that requires a degree of vulnerability for people to hold their hand and say, okay, we didn't get this right. And whether that's urban or whether that's rural, no one can genuinely hold their hand up and say they haven't impacted the environment. But I think in future, if we could be in a place where people were actually working together, back to working together to genuinely make a difference, to genuinely try to help us recover and help nature recover, then that would be brilliant.
Incredible. Claire, what's the one question I haven't asked you you wish I had?
Why? Why'd you do it? And we've probably sort of touched on it, and because we can all do whatever jobs we want, but I think ultimately I do all that I do to make my dad on his cloud proud, and to the same degree now my husband and my children and my mum proud for trying my best.
Are you proud of you?
Most of the time. All I can do is try my best, and that's what Dad says. Have you tried your best? Yes. Well, that's all you can do.
And this has been one of our best podcasts.
Yeah.
You're an absolute star. Thank you so much. We've loved having you here, and we're going to do more of these. You're going to be back again.
Thank you for believing in me.
Oh, always.